Welcome to a Telltale Books video, continuing my series about Poul Anderson, reading everything I can get my hands on in order of publication. I'm only at number 2, and it's actually the second of the Tomorrow's Children series. It's titled Chain of Logic. Now, Chain of Logic, which also has an alternate title of just Logic, was originally published in John W. Campbell's Astounding Science Fiction magazine in July of 1947. So just a few months after Tomorrow's Children had been published. And it is a continuation from Tomorrow's Children, although Tomorrow's Children is a complete single story, and so is Chain of Logic. Chain of Logic just is set in the same future America after an atomic war, and the same landscape with high amounts of radiation in the landscape, and people who are exhibiting mutations as a result of the radioactivity left over from the war. It focuses on a guy named Wayne and Wayne's son. And at this time, all of the children who were being born, all of the children who had been born, were showing varying types and degrees of mutation. Some of them looked perfectly fine, but when they x-rayed them, they found out things like their organs were flipped. Others had visible problems, like Wayne's son had really long legs and a larger than normal head and a squat body. And they also are seeing that at first a lot of children were being born, but more recently births are kind of tapering off. People are becoming sterile. Now, in this United States, this blasted out United States, you have kind of a north-south situation again, where in the north, you have people kind of recovering and building communities and starting to farm again. And in Portland, Oregon, a new United States government is forming and reaching out to the other northern towns that they come in contact with, and they're establishing flights of supplies to different of these towns to help people out. But in the South, a lot of people from the North headed south, because things were blasted out. They didn't have central heat going anymore because the power plants had all been shut down by the war, and blown up or otherwise rendered inoperable. So in order to avoid freezing during the cold winter, a lot of people headed south. So in the South, you had a lot of overcrowding. Things kind of broke down into anarchy, and you had these roaming gangs develop. Now, this one gang decides, because the leader of the gang came from Wayne's town, he decides he's going to take his gang back home and take over. So they do just that. They go to this town and they move in one night and just start shooting police and beating people up, forcing them all into the town square. But they didn't know about Wayne's son, and neither did Wayne, that he saw this coming. He heard something in the night that he's got incredible mind powers. He was able to deduce that this was a gang coming into town to do no good, and he worked out through a chain of logic, which we aren't capable of putting things together at this level. He was able to put things together through a chain of logic, the logical events that would happen and the logical way for him to do something about it. And so he sets off to look for materials to build something. I'm not going to go any farther than that. It is a good story, although these atomic mutation stories, I mean, we pretty much know today it would just be cancer and these kids would just die young. And I suppose there is a possibility of gene mutations popping up which would be successful and would maybe have some increased powers of some sort that we don't have. But back at this time, a lot of authors saw it as possibility of a Superman developing. And that exact term, Superman, was actually used in the story. So I don't feel that this story reaches up to the level of a top tale, but it was a very enjoyable story, only slightly dated. I still think it's readable and enjoyable. And I would recommend it if you're interested in this series, of course, the whole thing. And when I get there, I want to read this whole book to see, because a lot of writers rewrote their stories before they put them into novels, into book form like this. They rewrote the original magazine story. And so I want to reread, when I get to this, I want to reread the first two stories. And then there's a third story that was new to this book to make up Twilight World, which is the entire series. I want to see, though, if Anderson made changes. But the original story, of course, is in Astounding Science Fiction for July 1947. I don't have that. I do have Call Me Joe from Nespa Press, one of my favorite publishers. And this is a collection of early works by Poul Anderson. First in a whole series of books of the collected short works of Poul Anderson. When they say collected, it means it's probably close to everything, but it's not quite everything. So you gotta be careful with those terms. If you want complete short stories, you gotta get somebody that says complete short stories, like the Clifford Simak series of books that I have. But when they say collected short works of Poul Anderson, it means you're probably not quite going to get everything. There's going to be some missing. But it's an amazing book with an amazing illustration by Bob Eggleton. Absolutely brilliant. The illustration is for the title story, Call Me Joe, which we'll get to eventually. Published more than a year later in 1948. It's also in Call Me Joe, and was also published in Astounding in December 1948, and it's titled Genius, and it's a novelette, where Chain of Logic was also a novelette. And so was Tomorrow's Children. So pretty consistent links here. Genius will be my next one. I hope you'll join me for that and all the other Poul Anderson and every other author that I'm reading and talking about. I'm having fun doing this, so I will be here doing more of these. And till then, like us, subscribe to our channel, and leave any comments about Tomorrow's Children, the Tomorrow's Children series, Chain of Logic, or just Poul Anderson that you care to leave in our comments section of the video. I really want to hear from you, hear your thoughts about these things. Just don't give any spoilers. And I will see you next time.